Welcome back to Rad Dads, a podcast where I, Micah Sherman, interview some of the coolest dads I know who have a big heart for their families and an even bigger love for Jesus. Today's episode, I'm interviewing a dad who has served faithfully as a junior high pastor for 25 years. Our verse of the episode is brought to you by Psalm 23, 1-3. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. Grab your coffee. Let's get started. Welcome back to Rad Dads. This is your host, Micah Sherman, and it is episode 9 today. Hard to believe that we're almost at 10 interviews. And currently I am at Calvary Church of Santa Ana, which is where I grew up going to church and school. And today we have a very special interview. Get to interview actually my old junior high youth pastor, who not only was my junior high youth pastor when I was a kid, but also has continued to be for a number of years, and we'll get into that. So Josh Simpson, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Micah. I'm excited to be here.
So, Josh, I in Rad Dads, we do a scouting report. So I get to kind of just introduce you. I get to brag about you, and introduce you to those who are listening. Very exciting. You can always confirm or deny any of the information if it's true or false.
Perfect.
So Josh is the junior high / middle school pastor at Calvary. Grades 6 through 8.
Correct. That is correct.
All right. I'm going to give your actual education that's listed on the Calvary website. Because when do you ever get to brag about your degree or anything? So you went to Biola University, bachelor's in communications.
Correct.
Minor in Bible and Christian education. You went to Talbot Seminary, master's in Christian education with emphasis in youth.
That is absolutely correct.
Yes. All right.
Feels like a long time ago, though. That was,
I know.
Graduated in 2005.
2005. The reason why I wanted to interview you, Josh, is so this podcast is called Rad Dads. You currently do not have any biological kids. However, you have been a spiritual father, uncle, brother to junior high kids over how many years?
25 years.
25 years. And that is incredible to me, including myself.
Yes.
I was in your junior high ministry.
That is crazy. Yes.
And 25 years of serving faithfully. And I just thought, man, what a privilege to just get to chat with you and ask you some good questions that I'm sure many parents have or will have. That you can maybe just shed some light on in your experience.
Yeah, I would love to be a help as much as possible.
Cool. And before we get there, I got to chat with some friends, some coworkers of yours, and some friends of mine that were also in your youth group.
Oh, man.
And just ask them what they love about you.
Oh, gosh.
So here it comes. All right. So some qualities that people like about you is your hospitality, very hospitable, organized, stylish, and personable.
Nice.
All right. Others have said you're a great teammate and very humble. As I think about my experience in junior high with you, unfortunately, it wasn't any sermons that I remember. So maybe that gives you a little pressure off anytime you give a sermon.
Yeah, that's usually the way it goes.
Yeah, for junior high, right? But really just, you always made me feel seen and just so much cooler than I ever felt as a junior higher. Because junior hires, they don't feel comfortable in their own skin.
Yeah.
And you're incredible at seeing junior hires and just making them feel seen and heard and loved. From my experience.
I appreciate that.
But we're not done. I'm just going to keep going. I was with another friend that Daniel Haro. We were at the beach the other day, and I got to ask him what he loves about you. And he kind of mentioned a similar thing. Fantastic at making those who are uncomfortable feeling comfortable. Another guy, wonderful encourager, always had a great attitude and always seems excited to see us, even though we are menaces at some times. That was a buddy of mine that we were in junior high together. And then another guy, Tommy Argo mentioned just you were there in a hard time of life in junior high, where there's bullying and things like that, and you were just a huge help in that time in middle school, and always friendly to the newcomers. So you've impacted hundreds of lives, man.
That's super special. Thanks.
So I don't know if anybody gets to do this for you, but I wanted to honor you in that way, man, that you have affected hundreds, if not thousands of lives.
Wow.
For the kingdom. And so just wanted to thank you on you.
Yeah. I wasn't expecting that. So what an encouragement.
Good rain down the love, man.
Yeah. Thank you, Michael.
So we made it past that part.
Yes.
We're going to move on to the interview.
Let's move forward.
Okay. So, getting into junior hires, what do you most enjoy most about working with junior high students?
Yeah, they're super fun. I mean, I feel like it's such a unique age where they're not like just little kids anymore, where you're afraid they're going to scratch their knee or something, and then they're also not full like high school students that can beat me up. They're kind of in that sweet spot of transition, and I think not only like physically, but I think spiritually, emotionally, like they're still young, where they want to be connected with the leaders. They want to spend time with me and my crew, but they're also independent, and they are learning how to make their own choices. It's not just, oh, my parents believe this, therefore I believe this, or my parents dress me and therefore I wear this. It's like they're making their own choices, everything from clothing to their favorite restaurants to what their view of God is. Right. And so I just love that kind of unique spot, like they're still young, but they're kind of getting older. Right. Totally. And I teach junior hires too, and I always have funny stories. There's so many good junior high funny story moments that I love teaching them. They're so fun. Yeah. And then like you mentioned earlier, I really have a passion for long-term ministry, and the fact that I get to meet these students when they're sixth grade, I feel like I feel like I'm still their pastor as they go into high school, as they go into college, as they become young adults. And I mean, if possible, I try to maintain friendships with as many as I can. And and I love that as well. And actually another friend of mine mentioned that the thing he most appreciated about you was that you're still friends. And he's my age now. Yeah. And there's not a lot of friendships like that. Where that continued friendship and faithfulness. So thank you. Yeah. That means a lot. Yeah. It's definitely exciting to work with middle schoolers, I think, for those reasons. Yeah. Yeah. And it is that special gap too of like, they're starting to ask questions and wanting to kind of make their faith their own, and maybe starting to step out of their parents' faith and into their own. And it's important. Yeah. It's an important season. It's a huge impacting season. Yeah. Yeah. Cool. And what have you noticed, junior hires you feel like they need or crave most, kind of from their parents, their grandparents, kind of whoever's at home, that you've observed? Yeah, I think students are longing to get the attention that they need. And middle school is a time of independence where, hey, I want to do this on my own, and I want to be in my room, so don't bother me. But so there's like that aspect, but I think they really want the attention and feedback from their parents. And I think, or whoever's raising them or whoever's around, like, I think they want to be seen. They want to be noticed. They long for that independence, but they also want feedback, I think. And like, even when it comes to say like punishments or something, is if you're a parent that just sits back and not engaging with your students, which might involve a punishment or discipline, I think they're looking for that, and I think they're looking for, parents to come alongside them. And even if they don't want to share everything that's going on in their lives, I just feel like they really do want to still have that parent that cares for them, that sees them, that is pouring into them. It's just maybe different than when they were little kids. Right. But I don't think they're ready for that relationship to end. I think they really do want to connect. So I'd say, like, as a parent or a coach or whatever you are, a grandparent, like, lean into your kids. Because I think they want you there, even if they might push back a little bit. I think they're still really longing for that. Yeah. So I don't know, and it's probably different for each student, but I just, something like that need for attention, and to know that someone loves them regardless of how many mistakes they made, or how bad they do on their math test. You know, they need to know that they have people in their corner.
Right. That's super helpful. As I feel like as a junior high parent, you're probably questioning that. Like, they don't seem like they want me, but like just being faithfully, being a faithful presence in their life regardless.
Yeah. And I think taking advantage of the times that they are with you, like when you're that taxi driver as a parent,
right?
Like,
yeah.
Say, hey, tell me about school. Tell me about your friends. Tell me about sports or whatever. And yeah, they want to go to the movies by themselves. They want to do things on their own, but you still have a lot of great impact on them. I mean, we talk about a lot that parents are primary.
Right.
I think that means the primary influence on your kid. I mean, everything from spiritual things to, like, I don't know, just anything in life. You are the one that's going to impact them the most. So I think lean into that.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Lean into it.
Totally. Yeah. I think about you. I think about another friend of ours who was a small group leader for a long time. His name's Matt Hempel. Shout out to Matt. Just of people that have been faithfully continued in youth group as a leader. I remember helping him out, and it was a high school ministry, and he was a high school like senior leader, and he'd been with these kids since 6th grade.
Yeah.
And they were the biggest group too. So it was just kind of this special moment of like, it wasn't necessarily anything he said, but like he was faithful in serving and being present in their life. And I think that goes to show with parents too. Like, you don't have a choice. Like you're there. So also be like pursuing them emotionally and spiritually. And
you're their biggest fan. So support them, do that. Like show up at a game and be their big cheerleader. So,
yeah, be there. I like it. My wife gave this question, which I think was great. How do you get junior hires to talk?
Yeah. I mean, that can be really hard. And it probably depends. Like
probably polar opposites, really.
There's some girls that you can't
get both ends of the spectrum.
And then there's some boys that you can't get any words. And like, it's all mixed in there. Like, so this is something I love doing is I love youth group, but I also just love connecting with students in a smaller atmosphere.
Yeah.
At camp at Hume Lake, we do something called one-on-ones. Yep. And, it's a safe place with a lot of people around, so I can meet with a student and go get a milkshake and then talk. So going back to that, I think having some type of food item or a drink or something is so helpful. I even look at scripture, and I just feel like a lot of the time Jesus interacted with people. Totally, There's often some type of food involved.
He's always eating with people.
Yeah. I think there's something about maybe having a full belly or just something about interacting with people and then having food.
Totally.
Whenever I meet with a student, whether it's at camp or locally, I'll say, hey, can we meet up? And I'll bring you in and out, or I'll, let's go grab a bagel, or, if they want a smoothie or something. Cause I just feel like having that food item helps. And then number 2, I think playing games. I'm a big game player. So I always have a deck of cards on me. And so I usually start with that. Let's get some bagels. Let's play a card game. Yeah. And it kind of takes away some of that tension and the awkwardness of oh, I'm sitting with this person I don't know very well. And then, to be honest, I just start asking really basic questions. I'm like, so tell me about your family. And I'm trying to get them to paint this picture so I can see what their life is like at home. Right. What does your dad do for work? Or how many siblings do you have? Who's more strict, mom or dad? I try to ask all these questions. And then obviously, what are you passionate about? If you could be anywhere, where would you go?
Cool.
Are you artsy? Are you sporty? Are you, trying to make them feel excited about what they're doing. And then I want to lean into that and then ask some more follow-up questions.
Cool.
So I think that's initially just asking a ton of questions. And then it often leads to deeper things where they'll start sharing things about struggles they have at school or frustrations with their family or just little things start to come out. And I think it's really cool. And even when a student's resistant to meet with me, more often than not, I think they want to keep doing it or meet up again. And they get some free food and play a game. But I think those are some really key things.
Cool.
Yeah. If kids are really hard to talk to, I'll also do I'll just give them 2 options. They have to choose, like pancakes or waffles.
Right.
Yeah. They have to choose. And
Super simple.
And then they'll ask me one, and we'll go back and forth. And but it's the ball rolling. I think comfortability, I think, is huge. Yeah. And so I try to fill in that gap with some food and some good games and some good questions. There you go. It's funny because I feel like that's not just kids. I think that's adults too. Yeah. Like you get us food or you get us watching something or playing a game, and then everybody starts getting a little lighter and feeling like they can open up. Yeah, because that one interrogation type vibe is just not comfortable. Yeah, right. Hey, we're gonna sit down at this table and I'm gonna stare at you and ask you questions. That's not conducive to a good conversation. Sure. Yeah. And again, I would look at Jesus and just eating with people at their homes or walking through some field and pointing things out. I just feel like those are the times where I don't know, real life happens and you get some good, genuine answers. Yeah. So yeah, I really try to encourage students to be real and not fake. I don't want to hear the fake answer. Sure. I want to know how life is, Yeah. So sometimes it goes better than others, but yeah. And I guess after this many years, I feel like I'm starting to perfect the art of asking what's questions. Worked and what's not worked. Yeah. So cool. That's really helpful. All right, let's move on. What have you seen that junior hires struggle most with in kind of our current culture? And would you say that it's the same old things when you started this position, or do you feel like it's different? Great question. I'm under the belief that it is very similar. I don't think a lot has changed. Ecclesiastes 1:9 says, there's nothing new under the sun. Just, I think there's a lot of the same struggles that kids experience, whether, they're middle school or high school or whatever. So I think they're feeling the same insecurities, the same questions about, am I valuable? Do people like me? Am I cared for? Am I seen? I don't think that changes a whole lot. Yeah. However, there's a lot of things that have changed in our culture and in our world that pour into that and impact that. But I think the basic issues are the same. Like I said, insecurities and stuff. But now with technology, these kids were raised with social media, internet, phones, that kind of thing, where I wasn't. And obviously it's a huge part of my life now, but I think that was almost like a second parent or babysitter for them to have influence. Yeah. This, and it's just, everything's at their fingertips information wise. And it's a big distraction in some ways. I mean, I'm going to be honest. I love technology. Yeah. My cell phone is so helpful. But it can be a distraction where even as an adult, I find myself like, oh, I got to check my email or my Instagram or my texts, and I'm not really present. And so I think middle schoolers struggle with that. Yeah. And their attention span is maybe different than it was. That's an interesting thought. Yeah. 25 years ago. Right. What else? I think kids seem busier to me. I feel like youth group is an option of many options. Church on Sunday is an option of many options. They have sports, which is awesome, but they're part of club teams and travel teams and school teams. And so not do they have one practice, a day, they'll have two practices and then special training. So I've noticed that. And there's just things that felt like the norm aren't the norm anymore. Even school, there's a lot of options. You can, felt like there's private school, there's homeschool, there's online school, there's all those different options and those that are kind of like hybrids of those. And so you just expect most of your students go to the local public school or to a local Christian school, but it just feels like they're all over. Yeah. A lot of different experiences and educationally. Yeah. So it just feels like there's more options, which is a huge blessing, but it creates different challenges of kids connecting. Sure. Yeah. So and then obviously we went through a weird season with COVID stuff. And again, I think kids are pretty much the same, but there's probably lack of development because they were shut up in their home for a good chunk of time.
Yeah. I like that you said just the same questions are still happening. They're still questioning their worth, their value, their friends. Like that hasn't changed. And I think that really kind of starts to happen like right at this age is like starting to actually think about those things.
Yeah. Middle school's unique, and that's where you'll have this childhood friend that you've been best friends with forever. And then all of a sudden they're not hanging out with you because they don't think you're cool enough, or they found this other group. And I think it really can impact and make you ask those questions. Am I valuable? Am I loved?
Yeah.
Am I seen? And so, but I do feel like that's just an ongoing thing, but there's a lot of influencers on that. I'd say like family has changed a bit too, where it felt like when I was growing up, most people had two parents at home and some siblings and a dog,
Sure.
And not that that wasn't all the cases, but it feels like there's a lot more variety now. And I wouldn't say like they're broken homes, but they're just different types of homes with maybe a single parent or two different, like
blended
families, or maybe you're being raised by grandparents, or so there's like a whole bunch of scenarios which aren't necessarily bad, but it's just different. And I think that can add challenges as well. Even like consistency, like some kids can only come to youth group every other week because they're with mom or with dad. But so like to go back to your original question, I think there's a lot of new things in our world and culture that are impacting students. But overall, I think we all have the same struggles we've had since the beginning of time. I look at a lot of stories of Jesus interacting with people, and if you look and kind of read into those stories, it's like people want to be seen, people want to be heard, they feel ashamed, and they need to know that they're loved. And Jesus was the best at that, caring for people. So,
well, and I loved like my experience with you guys for junior high, because despite the differences, like you came to youth group, you had a lot of fun, and you had different experience, different background, but like you came and you got to have a lot of fun and learn about Jesus, and then go on some cool events and trips together, which those I feel like were so helpful in making friends. Like that's where friendships started. It was at, the summer camps and the winter camps that you guys do such a good job at.
I appreciate that.
Cool. I'm sure every junior high parent is going through how do I talk about purity and sex, and when do I bring that up? And, and then you have like church and school, and who talks about it with them. And so I'm sure in the 25 years that you guys have been working with junior hires, like you guys you've had talks about that, sermons about that. How have you guys kind of gone about chatting about purity in your guys' youth group?
Well, like I said earlier, I think parents are primary. I think parents do have a huge role in impacting their students and teaching them about purity. And as a church, as a youth group, we want to come alongside parents and use the Bible as a guide for making pure and wise choices. But we really want to support parents. And so communication is something that I really want to do. Is we do a series every year in February where we used to call it like love, sex, and dating. Now we call it like relationship goals. And, cool, so it's morphed over the years, but we really want to keep parents in the loop. Some students are ready to talk about some pretty deep things. Other kids are pretty not aware of what's happening.
Well, you have like the puberty thing where like some haven't started puberty, some are like already men and women.
Exactly. So like some students are like, hey, I want to date, and I love this. I see this other person, I want to go for them, and like whatever, like date them. And some kids are like, girls are gross and stay away from me. Cooties.
Big spectrum.
But I do see value in talking about it. But we do our best to be sensitive to parents and students. So like I said, we do a series every February right now it's called like relationship goals. Sundays we'll talk about relationships with family, friends, parents, authority figures, because those are important relationships. on Wednesday nights, we start to talk about what does it look like to respect the opposite sex? What does it look like to treat someone with respect? What does it look like to honor God in our desire for dating? A lot of it is like, oh, what do I get out of it?
Totally, yeah.
Or like, I want attention, or I want the most beautiful or attractive person. But we really try to adjust their point of view to say, how can I love someone and care for them well? How can I put someone above myself?
Yeah.
And like I said, like middle school relationships, the likelihood of it really going anywhere is not high. I'm not necessarily opposed to kids dating and stuff.
Right. But they're gonna date regardless.
Yeah, and it's parents' approval. Like, I'm not trying. I don't encourage it. I also don't say it's evil or anything. Yeah, because I don't think that. But then, like, so we do that. We kind of like gradually go through, and then we talk about like, what does the Bible talk about marriage? What does the Bible say about this? And we try to like, really point back to Scripture. Unfortunately, Scripture doesn't always specifically talk about dating or something. Right. Yeah. But there's a lot of really helpful verses and passages that can help you, like, okay, well, what's my motivation? What's my desire? And am I honoring God with those things?
Yeah. What do you feel like? You said, like, you're always kind of defaulting to the parents and like being in communication with them. What does that kind of looked like with like keeping the parents in the loop and like that kind of relationship, I guess?
Yeah. I mean, we do a weekly email to parents, but in addition to that, I'll write a special email that's really just focused on this series.
Yeah.
We try to go through an outline of what we're going to cover each night. So parents can be like, oh yeah, I think this is a good topic for my kid to hear, but this one feels a little more advanced. Yeah. We just don't want to like expose
blindside them.
Yeah. And it's not like we're teaching them things or using words that are offensive, but a lot of the students have questions, and sometimes they'll blurt something out, and we're like, "Oh, that was a
very junior hires.
That's almost inappropriate question. Yeah. I'm blushing."
Right.
Yeah. So going with that too, we also break off in groups because we also find that like a 6th grade boy is going to have a different question than an 8th grade girl. Sure. So we'll do like, okay, we're going to do 6 different groups. 6th grade boys go over here with these leaders, and so we'll have like, what is that, like 6 groups spread around our youth. Our campus, so they can go through some questions and then hopefully feel it's a safe place to ask questions and like, well, how do you know when the right time to date is? That's a great question. Let's dig into that. Or and the 8th grade boys are struggling with pornography or whatever else they might be struggling with, and so we really try to give them some good advice and come alongside them and talk about forgiveness and grace, but also just like God's desire for us to be pure. And we do everything from like those small groups. We'll do panels where I'll have like, I would love to get, like some older married couples to like some younger leaders that are dating to like a new married couple, and talk about their experience and talk about what dating and marriage looks like for them, and occasionally some of the mistakes that they made. Something that I'm like passionate about too is just not making general statements like everybody struggles with this. Right. I just know that like, I think I was younger too. And I'm like, oh, I don't struggle with that. What's wrong with me?
I can relate with that. That brings me back to.
Yes. I really like my leaders. Like we can say, a lot of guys might struggle with this, which is true, but not every kid is struggling with that or like it's just the whole spectrum. Like, but I really want it to be a safe place where students feel like they can be heard, and especially in our culture now where there's a lot of whether it's same sex or different agendas that they're hearing from our culture, and I don't want a kid to walk away feeling excluded or that they're a weirdo. My hope is that they can experience the love of Jesus and maybe feel safe talking about their experience. But that's a hard one. I mean,
I know. Well, and I think creating that safe space, because the reality is they have questions. But do they have a place that they can ask those questions? Hopefully it's at home, but it might not be. Or maybe it starts in youth group and then you're able to chat with parents and assist with those conversations. But those questions are happening, so.
And we always do a push towards purity at the end. And it doesn't mean like, we also like God has so much grace, because some kids maybe have already made poor choices or taken steps that is different from what we're teaching. So we talk about grace, we talk about forgiveness, but we do talk about like purity and just like God has a great plan for you. Jesus talks about, I've come to give you life and life to the full.
Sure.
We want our kids to have a full life, and I think we get that by following Jesus and what he says is right for us.
Totally.
But it's a hard topic, and
yeah, totally.
So I'm thankful that I get to have a role in it, but I'm also thankful I don't that I have to deal with it all the time.
Right.
It's a lot.
No, totally. And I think that, being able to develop a healthy view of purity and sexuality in a safe space that is full of grace and full of forgiveness, like, man, is such a gift to have as a junior hire, and to have, I think about as a parent, like, there's other leaders I can kind of trust in that my kid may or may not want to talk at all about this with me. But, there is some leaders I know and trust at this church or whatnot that I can kind of partner with to love these kids as best as we can through junior high.
Yeah. Basically, I would just encourage parents to reach out to youth pastors, youth workers, because we're all in this together. Let's come alongside each other and just to help answer questions and, and just support each other in prayer and raising kids. Right.
Yeah. And that's kind of been like the part of the dream of like this podcast, is letting dads and parents and others know that they're not by themselves, and other families are going through other stuff too. And there's other resources out there, and a lot of great churches and ministries out there that they can plug into and kind of develop that team, because it, takes a village to raise a kid, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So next question, you're doing great. Plowing through. If you could give a seminar, message to all of the parents of your junior high kids, what would the topic be
on? Something that I'm passionate about is just connecting. I want to see students connect. Our middle school group here at Calvary Church is called The Spot, and I call it that because this is the spot where middle schoolers connect. This is the spot where they belong. We really want that to be something that's on the forefront of our minds, because I think that's just, we're middle schoolers, and just me personally, like I want to connect. I need connection in my life.
Right.
And so we want to create a safe place for middle schoolers to connect. So that's definitely something that's on the forefront of my mind. And I feel like that's what we work towards. It's kind of like my passion, my mission statement is to really help students connect. And especially as a middle schooler, that is so important as they're developing as a young human being, is to have connection, especially outside of the home. I think middle schoolers need to start developing great peer relationships, but also healthy relationships with other adults in their lives. That might be a coach or a teacher or a youth group leader. But I really want to see that. And the bummer part is, though, I know that there's so many kids that are on the fringe that are feel ignored or they don't belong. And I really want to reach out to them, and I want to see them get connected. I don't know. Do you know my story of middle school, like growing up?
I don't think so.
Yeah. So I grew up going here to Calvary Church. I grew up in a city nearby called Villa Park. Great family. We went to church here, but I never really connected here.
Ironically.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like we came a few times a month and not on midweek. And so I just feel like I struggled to make connections. My parents sent me to camp twice in elementary school. I cried both times and sat on the bus with my leader.
Yeah.
And then by the time middle school came, I just kind of refused to go to youth group. I went twice, sat in the back, crossed my arms, just felt uncomfortable. And so I'd say I'll sit with my parents in the main service, hopefully get a donut. But it wasn't until high school that I made some really solid connections, and people, like Jeff Biddle was the high school pastor my senior year, but Juliana Wetterholm, Tim Nellis, Megan Wallace, like all these people really jumped in and started loving me and caring for me. And it changed my perspective of church, and it changed my perspective of Jesus. I think for the first time, I felt like truly loved outside of my family, truly seen outside of my family. Wow. These people really embraced me. And so then after that, God opened up opportunities for me to start serving in middle school ministry. And just like, man, that how ironic is it? This is the group that I didn't want to be a part of at Calvary Church. And yet I feel like God knew all along that this is where he wanted me. And wow, I think I have a really sensitive heart towards kids on the fringe because that was me. Right. And it wasn't like the youth pastor was bad or did anything wrong. And it wasn't like I, as a kid, was wrong or bad, but something was disconnected, you know, like, and so I am seeking those kids that are on the fringe, and I want to grab a hold of them. Kind of like when Jesus saw Zacchaeus, he just sees them up in the tree and calls them by name. Yeah. I need to hang out with you today. And that's a
guy on the fringe.
Yeah. Right. Like that's what I want. And so my favorite part of ministry is just greeting students. Yeah. I want to stand at the door, say welcome, learn their names. That's what I get really excited about.
That's cool.
So your question a long time ago was what I would want to teach like a seminar on. I think it's about connecting, because we all have a role in that, whether your kids are super plugged in or on the fringe. Like those kids that are super plugged in, I want to give them a heart and passion for outreach, right? Like we're doing Alpha Youth right now on Wednesday nights.
I didn't know they had a youth program.
It is dynamite. Check it out if you haven't, or find a church that's doing it. Cool. So great, covers all these great topics, and it's all really, talking about the basics of the Bible and what is the Bible, and do you think the Bible is important, or whatever topic. But it's so good for any kid, anybody that just has questions. But I'm really challenging my students. I'm saying you need to get out there into your school, therefore go make disciples. And for them, that might be just inviting someone to something fun or to our youth group.
Cool.
So I want to empower our students to do that. And I want to empower parents to empower their students to do that. But for me, I want to help kids connect, because I think that's how I fell in love with Jesus, is through the power of people pursuing me. And there's so many ways. If your kid is on the fringe, let's talk. Let's figure out a way. We need to get them connected. Totally. It's not always easy. It's not a magic formula either, but
it takes time.
It does. And it, like in my situation, it didn't work out the way maybe my parents hoped, but God knew it was happening, and I wouldn't have it any other way at this point.
Right. Man, thanks for sharing that. I didn't know that was part of your story, but how cool is it that God knew what he was doing, and there was a purpose to even your pain that you were going through that he was going to use to bless others.
Yeah. And no doubt it was painful. You feel awkward and like you're in the wrong spot, but but it's really exciting. So I'm excited just that God does have master plan for each of us, even through the good times and the hard times.
Totally. Okay. Last two questions.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Fun question. What is your favorite part? I know you said greeting, but maybe favorite event that you love to do in junior high for your ministry?
There's several. I mean, I'm a theme person, so anytime I get to come up with a really fun theme, like summer themes, I'm all about that, and getting some sweet swag, and like a look that is cool. That's something that's really fun. Yeah. I'd say a really cool event we do, it used to be called Back to School Bash, and it's something like that, but now we call it the Half Nighter. Yeah. It's just cool event, and the idea is I'm too old for all-nighters, and kids get destructive, so we don't. But a Half Nighter, meet from 8 to midnight, and just take over our church campus with inflatables and food and great music, fun flashing lights, and it's just such a fun event where students again invite their friends, and we get to share the gospel. Cool. And my hope is that students get plugged in. That's our big hype event. Yeah. Aside from that, I'd say having coffee and playing cards with kids.
Just the day-to-day, right?
That's really what I get excited about. But those events definitely have their place. Yeah. We want Jesus to be known in our community, in Orange County specifically, and I think that's a fun way to do it. You know, why not?
Yeah. Cool. All right. You've made it to the last question.
Last question.
Here we go. Really just any last kind of 2 or 3 points of advice to our junior high parents as we close out.
Oh, man. The first thing that came to my mind is just hang in there.
Yeah.
I'm not a parent. I don't have my own kids, but like you said, I have a lot of kids that I interact with. Right. And I know it's tough. And I imagine it's tough to live with your middle schoolers and your kids in general. But hang in there. God's given you this amazing opportunity to raise this young human being and point them to God. So hang in there. Like, I know there's going to be rough seasons.
Yeah.
But hang in there. And then the other thing is, I'd say reach out for help. Like you said, the church is created to be like this community, and we're in this together.
It's people, not a building.
Yeah, and you don't need to do it alone. Like, get in a group where you have support as a parent, like modeling great, like having a life group as an adult, I think is really helpful for you, but also models the value of that for your student. But find people that are praying for you, find people that will just be there to, hold up your arms when you're getting tired. That's a great story of Moses. He has two friends on the mountaintop and keeps his arms up. They're winning the battle, but when he lowers them, they start to lose. So two of his friends come alongside him and hold up his arms. And that's such an amazing visual for me. I can't do this alone. I need people in my life to help. So hang in there and get some support in your life.
Sure. Yeah. And there are a lot of great churches out there. I mean, shout out to Calvary. Yeah. So if you live locally, come and check out Calvary Church in Santa Ana. But
there's so many churches.
Yeah, there's a lot of great churches that are great to get plugged into.
Yeah, and I just love that, the whole community of Jesus coming together.
Totally. Cool. Awesome. Would you mind just praying us out and praying kind of just specifically for any junior high parents listening, to encourage them?
Let's do it. Well, thank you, Micah. Jesus, I just thank you for this opportunity to talk with my friend Micah. I'm thankful for what you're doing in his life and this awesome podcast. Lord, middle school is a unique age, and I know for many people it's a season of struggle. So, Lord, I pray for these parents as they're raising their kids. I pray that you give them your words. I pray that you give them your support. Lord, I pray that you meet them where they're at, whether their kids are thriving or really struggling. I pray that you just meet them where they're at. Lord, I do specifically pray for kids and families that are maybe struggling, feel like they're on the fringe. I pray that you provide just amazing relationships, caring adults, and great peers, just so these students know that they are loved by friends, by family, but especially loved by you, Jesus. But Lord, just bless these families and continue to do good work in their lives. In your name I pray. Amen.
Amen. And that was episode 9, and we're feeling fine. Thank you to all our listeners out there. Need help finding some great local Orange County youth groups? Please check out the various links to some awesome churches in the show notes. Feel free to leave a 5-star review if you like the interview. We are both on Apple Podcasts and Spotify for your listening pleasure. Hope you enjoyed your time with us, and we will see you in a couple weeks in the coming episode of Rad Dads.